Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to ClearCast, episode 40.
Woo!
ClearCast is turning 40. It's in the middle of midlife crisis. We might do something crazy on this episode. We're not sure. But this might be my favorite episode yet. It might be.
Ever?
Already?
It might be. And you're gonna see why here pretty quickly. I've got a couple amazing announcements. Number one, first of all, I get to introduce for the first time ever on camera Jancy Ulch as my guest host.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Jancy is uh is actually our content marketing manager at Clear Capital, and she's the producer of the show. So all of the episodes that you've watched up to this point, behind the scenes, pulling all the levers and pushing all the buttons and scripting out things and keeping Jeff and I sounding somewhat intelligent. It's all been orchestrated by Jancy. And so we decided, you know what? Let's put her on camera. Let's make her host. Let's let her see the other side of the curtain. And
Yeah, I
here's
uh,
the-
I came for the midlife crisis. That's why I'm here. But yeah, I see every episode behind the scenes, and thankfully, Kenan and Jeff, you guys are very easy to make look good. But I'm happy. I'm happy to be here. So thank you.
I came for the midlife crisis. I stayed for the dessert.
That's right.
So the other amazing thing we're doing today is that Jancy and I, get to put Jeff on the hot seat. And Jeff is actually, instead of a host, he is our guest today, and we get to grill him about CubiCasa.
Woo!
Yeah. Can't wait to get grilled. Let's hibachi me.
You know, I already see this as a bad idea.
No, it's going great.
So yeah, without further ado, I guess let me give Jeff a formal introduction,
Yeah,
since
do
many
it.
of you just know him as host, but
ClearCast host extraordinaire.
uh, but extra. We should put that on his title. Jeff is the president of CubiCasa, and he leads the company's overall strategy to digitize property data collection, to unlock actionable data insights for homeowners and mortgage professionals alike. And before he was at CubiCasa, he was EVP at Innovation Labs for Clear Capital. So I got to work with him in that capacity. And then he left me and went to CubiCasa. And but he led our innovation lab, which did a lot of the work to pioneer what we were doing with appraisal modernization, and eventually led to finding CubiCasa as a solution. So thank you for being on the show, Jeff.
Well, thank you
Welcome,
very
Jeff.
much for having me, Jancy and Keenan. It is an honor to be with you today.
It's an honor to have you.
So,
Jeff, can you tell us about CubiCasa?
I certainly can. I can't assume everybody in the world knows what CubiCasa is, even though I feel like they should, and
Mhm.
eventually they will. So CubiCasa is an app on your phone. You can get it on the Apple or Google Play Store. And it enables anybody with a smartphone to scan a property with their phone and get back a reliable floor plan with detailed measurements. So think of it as the world's easiest to use property data collection device. You use it with the phone you already have in your pocket. The scan doesn't require any training before you do it. It only takes about 5 minutes for a typical sized house. And so when you think of a technology that's that easy to use, that can create an output that's that reliable, it unlocks a lot of potential opportunities in real estate, mortgage, and beyond. And it's a fun thing to be a part of.
So,
so
how is it related to Clear Capital?
Well, legally, let's start there. It is a division of Clear Capital. It was acquired by Clear Capital back in 2021. But how it relates back to Clear Capital is um, in a variety of ways. First, Clear Capital has always intended to be at the forefront of appraisal modernization, so making the appraisal process better, more efficient, more equitable, more consistent. And the single hardest problem to solve, arguably, in that big journey is how do you get a non-appraiser to produce reliable property data, and GLA being one of the most important pieces of data used in the appraisal. And CubiCasa is just simply put the easiest, most scalable, best tool to support that there is in the market. So that's how it ties back to Clear Capital's kind of appraisal modernization mission. And then it ties back to the other kind of big part of what Clear Capital does, which is um, property data being as clean and up to date and accurate as possible to power things like AVMs, better sense of the market conditions. Like data is at the core of all of those types of products that Clear Capital supports. And so CubiCasa's mission is not just about floor plans; it's about creating a new ground truth layer of property data that's consistent and reliable. And as we continue to collect more of it, can power better decisions in the real estate and risk management ecosystems. So ties back to Clear Capital in that way as well.
Nice.
So give me a sense of what it was like, before you discovered CubiCasa. What were some of the challenges and things that led you to even know you needed a solution like this? Because, why hasn't this been here before? Like, why didn't we already have this type of tech available? So what led you to it?
Yeah, no, great question. So when I used to tell people that I was head of innovation labs at Clear Capital, I think they all envisioned it was this very glamorous thing where I was like helping to pilot drones or like doing like super cool data science stuff. And there was some of that super cool, interesting data science stuff. But it also involved like trying to stand up a program to train real estate agents to measure houses, which was very not glamorous, I can tell you from personal experience. And the reason we were trying to do that is that, as I mentioned before, getting gross living area that's reliable and accurate as part of a modern appraisal process is essential. For an appraiser to do a good job on a hybrid appraisal, they need to be able to rely on the square footage being correct. And there is a requirement that you have a floor plan sketch on those assignments for a good reason. So as Clear Capital looked at, okay, how are we going to partner with the GSEs on a new process where a non-appraiser is at the property collecting data? We realized, okay, we're going to have to train real estate agents how to sketch. They're going to have to figure out how to draw the house's footprint and then calculate what's the gross living area. And we knew that we were going to have to do that. And so we put a lot of effort over multiple years in developing a training program, best practices, materials that we could scale up. And it was working, I would say. It was working pretty well. We were able to get several hundred real estate agents trained in how to do it. We were doing live production assignments with those manual sketches, but we just couldn't shake the feeling as we were scaling that there had to be a better way because it was really hard to do. To get those couple hundred real estate agents trained was all hands on deck, multi-year effort, and really the future of the modernization programs relied upon people feeling that the data from the collector was credible.
Mm,
So we were while we were training all these agents in the kind of old school sketching ways, we were looking out into the market and canvassing what are these new technologies out here that might be able to automate the floor plan in some way.
mm,
We looked at everything, every solution you could imagine. And ultimately, what we knew we were looking for was CubiCasa before we knew CubiCasa existed.
mm.
We kept saying like, man, which something with your smartphone should take like 5 minutes, should require no training. Like that, something like that's got to be out there.
Mhm.
It must be. It must be somewhere.
Exactly. So when we found it, it was like, wow, what? This is the thing. Um, So it was exciting when we found it, and we immediately moved forward very quickly with trying to do a commercial agreement between Clear Capital and CubiCasa because we saw the benefit right away.
So you mentioned that CubiCasa floor plans take about 5 minutes to generate. What is that compared to a traditional sketch? Like, what are the time savings there?
So pretty significant for a typical property. I would say to sketch, let's say, a 2,500 square foot house with some unique angles and things like that, you're going to end up spending maybe 15, 20 minutes on it.
Mm,
Um, but that continues to grow and increase the more complex the property gets.
mm,
So as you kind of work your way up, we've had appraisers tell us that it can take them 2 hours to sketch a really big, complicated property, right? And so there's definitely time savings, but even more important, there's scalability impact. To accurately sketch a property by hand requires serious knowledge and precision, and it's easy to get it wrong,
mm,
honestly. And what we'll often find is there are also inconsistencies in how different appraisers will do their definition of how to calculate GLA.
Hmm.
You know,
mm,
person in one market was trained to include the square footage of the stairs in the level above, and then in a different market, they were trained to include the square footage from the stairs in the level below.
Hmm.
mm,
We would run into that all the time in our training process, and it's like, man, this is just super inconsistent. So it was not just the time savings, it was the scalability and the consistency that drew us to it.
mm.
So, how does it work? I was at FinTech meetup last week and talking to a bunch of startups, and every single company, all 5,000 companies have AI in their title now. Um, uh, does Kubicasa use any AI, or are you guys, still in the dark ages? What do you do?
Man, we were using AI before AI was cool. Yes, there is artificial intelligence, some elite machine learning principles at play here. And yeah, without getting into too much detail, it's just a lot of really special proprietary data sets we've collected over many years and many scans that we've been able to then apply really, really good machine learning principles to just continue to derive better and better process that's more automated and efficient. So it is it can seem like a really simple process on your phone. That's the goal. But on the back end, there's a whole bunch of tech and a whole bunch of process design to make sure that the output's reliable.
Do
Mm.
you have to have like LiDAR? A lot of the newer kits we've seen, or things that are doing spatial recognition and stuff seem to require like the latest greatest phone, or LiDAR equipped device. Does Kubicasa also rely on some of that?
So you don't have to have a new Apple LiDAR device to use our product. Our product will work on any device that's, I would say less than 5 years old. So we like to think that we cover the vast majority of the devices you'd ever use.
Hmm.
Uh, And now, if you have a LiDAR device, that's great. We'll incorporate the data that comes out of the LiDAR scan into the process. That helps make it a little bit more reliable. But we are confident in the results we can get from any kind of device because we've got a computer vision based approach to things. We don't solely rely upon the LiDAR data that's collected. So, and that's another big piece of the scalability is if you have a vision as big as ours, where we want a floor plan on every listing in the world, we need to be able to support every kind of device and every kind of use case.
Right. So you've talked a little bit about digital gross living area or GLA. Can you tell us some more about that? What is it and how does it tie into what CubiCasa does?
Yeah. So digital GLA is what we think as the next evolution of GLA, of gross living area. Um, and specifically, there's some limitations to how GLA was calculated in the past and still current day with respect to kind of the traditional hand sketching measuring approach. That's what we're going to call analog GLA for purposes of branding here. So Analog GLA, first, as I mentioned before, you get inconsistent application of principles. So even if you measure the thing right, one person might decide to count the square footage on in this way, and another person might choose to do it that way.
Mhm.
And as much as the industry's tried to create consistency and standards, it's just there's a lot of room for inconsistency in the application of principles. So, digital GLA is automatically calculated based upon the scan, and it always produces the logic of how the square footage is calculated to the ANSI standard that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have oriented themselves around. So you can be sure that it'll be consistent. Um, Second, let's say analog GLA has a pretty limited quality of output in terms of what's the visual that the lender gets to view at the end or the end user. Typically, it's just exterior walls and some random room labels dropped in. Anyone that's looked at an appraisal report knows what I'm talking about. Whereas with digital GLA, with what CubiCasa provides, you'll get all the interior walls. We have an option to place all the appliances and all of that. And it just creates a much clearer understanding of the property than your typical approach. Um, and then finally, what we think is unique about it is it is something that because it's generated by the tech and not the person,
Hmm.
uh, digital GLA can be performed by anyone, including an interested party to the loan, right? For example, the real estate agent is using our product significantly when the house is listed, and that information could still be valid and used on the mortgage
Hmm.
if there was a lender process that supported it. So, because yes, sure, the agent was involved and they're a quote unquote interested party, but they had no influence on the outcome of the total number.
Mm.
The technology did that. So that's what's another very interesting and unique thing
Hmm.
about.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I mean, since we're all turning 40, let's kind of question everything for a sec. And uh, you know, the role of the floor plan as part of the listing process. You know, does that really matter? Like why, why is that important? I mean, we've got on most listing portals these days, you got tons of photos. You've got, that you can click through, browse through. You got a map, you've got property information. Um, uh, floor plans, you don't really see that many of them in the US, as a percentage of listings. So like why is that important that you want to solve adding a floor plan to every listing? What does that do for people on the real estate side of things? Um, help me, Jeff.
Well, I'm offended that you're even asking me this question, uh, since we've talked about it like 100 times. But okay,
I'm
uh,
just I'm just trying to make this interesting, Otherwise, I'm gonna go buy a Corvette and you won't hear from me again.
oh, because you just turned 40.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, gotcha. I have to buy a Corvette. Um, well, so here's how we think about it. The consumer who's searching for homes significantly benefits from having a floor plan attached to the property, as does the seller, because it helps the property sell faster by making a more informed consumer. But really, we like think of a higher level. The consumer really has a much better idea of the home they're looking at with a floor plan attached than without. And there's all sorts of research that indicates that consumers really want floor plans. The National Association of Realtors does a survey every year of buyers and sellers and asks them, "Hey, what real estate website features do you find most valuable?"
Mm.
And floor plans is always the most desired add-on after the standard photos and data. So it always goes
Mhm.
photos number one, property data number two, and number three is always floor plans.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That comes above virtual tours, above maps, above neighborhood information. Floor plans is always right there in the number three spot.
Hmm.
Um, and if you think about what a floor plan is, it makes a lot of sense that it would rank so high. It is the single best digital asset on a listing that can help a consumer understand at a glance, is this right for me?
Mhm.
Right? Like the photos are fantastic at that too, don't get me wrong, but you got to scroll through a batch carousel of 70 of those to really get a feel for the place. And then with each photo you're looking at, you're asking yourself, like, has this been edited? Is this a
Mm,
fisheye? How big is this room?
Right.
What's
mm,
it next to? Like, it's just, it's a great product feature, the photo carousel, don't get me wrong, but it's just different, right?
mm,
The floor plan is like, okay, I can see in a single image that the all the, for example, it's an open kitchen concept, and I love that, right? There's no wall between the dining room and the kitchen. I was looking for
Mhm.
that.
mm,
Or all of the primary living areas are on the main floor, and that becomes more important for people as they get older, right?
mm,
So like you can tell all of that stuff from the floor plan, um, in a way that you can't from other assets. At least not in the same efficiency of information transfer.
mm,
So, and we know this can work, that floor plans can get massively adopted because it's actually happened in other countries. So
Mhm.
mm,
in the US, it's still a niche product, maybe 20%, 25% of listings have it. But in Australia, UK, Sweden, Finland, Norway, a couple other markets, like they're standard. Like you wouldn't list your property unless you got a floor plan. So
yeah.
we've seen it done in other places now where our mission is to make that happen in the US.
Right. I guess we should clarify CubiCasa is a Finnish company.
Yes,
Um, so they are much more used to seeing floor plans. But I love
exactly.
the goal to get a floor plan on every listing. I feel like that additional context is great for buyers.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. The team in Finland that helped founded CubiCasa and built the tech grew up seeing floor plans on every
Mm,
listing, rental, for sale, you name it. So to them, it's second nature.
Mm.
right. So, how do you know that these floor plans are reliable? What kind of testing has CubiCasa done to prove that?
A lot. Let's put it that way.
Next question.
Well, so we've done a ton of testing on it, and I won't get into all the nerdy data science details, but I think the first important point to make is that whenever you're determining how reliable is something that's digitally produced, you have to compare it to, well, how reliable is the traditional approach? Because that's your benchmark, right?
Mhm.
And so for the traditional approach of measuring a property and sketching it out and using that to calculate the number, we've done testing with properties where there were two different full appraisals done on the same property in a short time frame of one another, and these were done by trained professional appraisers.
Mm.
And due to the inconsistencies we've talked about, and just natural errors that might happen, we have found that 4% is the average difference between two trained appraisers and their different gross living area calculations. So there's your baseline, right? Is like nothing is ever going to be absolutely perfect. Uh,
Mhm.
and the traditional process, that's the 4% variance. And typically you'll actually find like 5% of those properties ended up significantly different from each other, like 15% or more
Wow.
different in the GLA. So the testing we've done then with CubiCasa is you send two different people to the same property to do a CubiCasa scan. And these, bear in mind, these are just people who've never done a scan before. They've had no training.
Mhm.
Are the two different GLA calculations from CubiCasa. Remember, I mentioned for traditional appraisal, 5% of the time they're like significantly different. It is never significantly different for CubiCasa because we apply the same standards and principles to how we derive measurement data. Now, I will say we will still have the same 4% variance on average.
Mm.
That is just driven by the fact that there can be little minor variations in how somebody scanned or what the lighting was like, and how that may have very small impacts on the dimensional estimates.
Mm,
But again, it's within that it's same average you get in the traditional process with a lot less variance, like wide variance. So that's how we think about reliability of these floor
mm.
plans.
I was talking to
Interesting.
someone who had used it, and they're in a house. Um, where there's a lot of stuff everywhere, kind of like a hoarding sort of situation, and they couldn't even get into one of the rooms. And so pointed they put their phone through the doorway into the room and moved it around without actually walking into the room because they couldn't reach everything. And they're like, "Oh my God!" And it worked. It still worked. I couldn't believe it. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
so apparently, you don't even have to walk in a room. I don't get that, but
I will say it's a lot better if you walk in the room. Please walk
okay.
in the room if you can. Uh, but
So I shouldn't be advising people to just point their phone at the house and it's good to go.
no, no, you
No.
do actually need to scan the property
Oh,
for the
okay.
reliable result. But
Mm,
yeah, but that example you're pointing to is one we hear a lot, which is I didn't think it was going to work, but it did.
Mm,
And that's because we put a lot of care and thought into the models, but also we make sure that there is a human review at the end to make sure that everything's
mm,
connected and makes sense, right? And that's important to make sure that every time a scan happens, we produce a result and that we believe it's reliable. So
right.
that's a unique part of our solution.
So give us a sense of where this is being most utilized. I know like for capital we work a lot in the lending space. You mentioned that, but really it seems like the adoption is happening more in real estate and upfront. So who's using it today? Who can use it? Do you have any I guess future plans on how you would make this accessible to folks?
Yeah, so it's a tech that's so easy to use that it definitely fits multiple use cases. But we do have a strong focus on real estate, as you mentioned. So I would say the primary verticals we support, what first and foremost is real estate. And that's why our company mission is really about we want to get a floor plan on every listing, right? We've
mhm,
rallying the company and our focus around that. Number one, because there's the most obvious customer feedback and signal from that vertical of people like, wow, fits our needs exactly. We want a floor plan for the listing. Um, but also because the more information that we can collect during the listing process, the more we think in the future we can help create a more efficient process for mortgage insurance and things that come after the house is listed.
Mm,
Um, but then, so that's the primary vertical, and within that vertical, there's a lot of agents and real estate photographers are
mm,
the two primary groups. But then we are used by appraisers and by
mm,
appraisal companies who are often doing the appraisal modernization assignments, which Clear Capital is definitely the market leader in.
mm,
And then we do actually have quite a bit of use from home inspectors as well and
mm.
contractors. That was a bit surprising to us. We didn't go out and try to grow in that market intentionally, but just looking at our signups and the types of folks signing up, it seems it's striking a chord there as well.
Yeah, I'm
Interesting.
seeing a lot more of that home improvement, renovations, people needing to buy homes that need some work, in order to have them be more affordable, and then immediately trying to, you know, understand the home enough to be able to get a bid from a contractor on what it takes. And so I'm hearing more of that need for very quick um plans, and layout for like the dimensions and all of that.
Mhm,
So seems like it would be a good fit, good fit
Yeah,
for it.
exactly. Especially when you think about there's just such a huge shortage of contractors and inspectors. We keep hearing, there's in the years ahead, um, it's going to be hard for trades to keep up with demand, we always hear.
Mm,
And so
right.
there's going to need to be more tools that make that process efficient and maybe empower the homeowner themselves to, capture the data about the property that the contractor or the inspector can then use to kind of say, hey, here's what we're going to do to the property. I think our hope is that becomes more common in the years ahead.
Hmm. So speaking of years ahead, and I guess in honor of our 40th birthday, what can we expect to see from CubiCasa this year?
Well, first and foremost, it's still just the mission We're trying to get a floor plan on every single listing in the US. That's job number one. We've made huge strides in that in the last 2 years that we're really excited about, but we got a lot of room yet to go. As I mentioned, our estimate is something like 20 to 25% of properties total might have a floor plan. Our data indicates we've got the majority of that, which is great. But our mission is hey, it doesn't have to be us getting on every single listing. We just think there should be a floor plan on every listing. So everything we're doing as a company is just trying to continue to push that number up to create a better outcome for consumers. And then in terms of our product roadmap, we've got some really, really cool stuff coming in the months ahead that is going to kind of start taking us above just floor plans. We've really we've gotten a lot of traction with floor plans as the sole and primary product, and that will always be our sole and primary product. But we've got some interesting, cool things cooking with regards to imagery that we think can then augment those floor plans and make them more useful. So look for more from us on that front in the future.
I can't
Wow.
wait. Sounds
Well,
exciting.
maybe we'll invite you back and let you talk about those things when they're done. But we're really busy. We have a lot of guests, so
Yeah, no,
we'll
I know.
we'll see if we can fit that in. But
I
no,
know. You've got the Corvette that I know is taking up a lot of your time now.
I spent a lot of
Biggest
time going
podcast in
50.
the real estate fintech space, I think.
That too.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time driving 50 miles an hour in the fast lane. Um,
Oh, that's you.
that now I've offended all the Corvette owners that are listeners, so I'm so sorry. I apologize. Please keep listening to the show. It's been amazing to have you on, Jeff. Jancy, great job as our
Yeah.
host,
Nice
Thank
job,
you.
Chance.
and appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time.
I'm glad we took a chancey on Jancy.
Hey, look at you.
I really want to sing right now, but I'll spare you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeff.
And it was an honor to be a guest for the first time on ClearCast.
Yeah, it was very interesting to learn more about CubiCasa.